Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's take up the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. The Supreme Court was expected to deliver an important ruling today on the Maharashtra floor test. Today morning, that is on the 26th of November, the Supreme Court has directed the Devendra Fadnavis government to prove its majority on the floor of the House on the 27th of November. The Supreme Court has also directed the governor of the state to ensure that a pro tem speaker is appointed in the assembly by tomorrow so that he can administer the oath to the newly elected MLAs who can later participate in the floor test. The Supreme Court has also directed the governor and the state government to ensure that the floor test is taken up through open ballot instead of a secret ballot. The Supreme Court also wants the floor test to be telecast live, considering the significance of this development. So this is all you need to understand from this article. Let us come back to this topic later once the floor test is completed. Now let's take up the next article. The Centre and the J&K administration has begun to release the detained politicians in a phased manner. See, the Centre and the J&K administration had detained a number of politicians in Jammu and Kashmir on the 4th and 5th of August before the special status of J&K was revoked under Article 370. These detained politicians, they were placed under preventive detention by using various sections of the Criminal Procedure Code. They were detained under Section 107, Section 109 and Section 117 of the CRPC, and their arrests received widespread condemnation from around the world and as well as in India. Such preventive arrests were condemned by human rights activists, by legal experts, and as well as by foreign media, by foreign governments and foreign lawmakers. The criticism was that the centre was violating democratic norms by placing politicians under such prolonged preventive detention. The centre was accused of violating the constitutional, democratic, and political rights of the politicians. After nearly 3.5 months, the centre and the J&K administration have begun to release the detained politicians, but their release comes with one condition. They are being forced to sign bonds, and according to these bonds, the politicians are not supposed to make any public statements, they are not supposed to deliver any public speeches, and they are not supposed to participate in any public assembly for a period of 1 year from their release. And if they violate these terms and conditions of the bond, they would be liable to be arrested again. The signing of these release bonds would curb the democratic and political rights of the leaders, and hence most of them have refused to sign the release bonds. Legal experts have even criticized such prolonged detention and the imposition of such restrictions because, according to them, the government has not been following established procedure. For example, under Section 107 of the CRPC, an individual can be placed under preventive detention and his detention can be prolonged only if there is sufficient evidence available and only if there are witnesses to show that the individual poses a threat to public order. According to these experts and activists, such evidence and witnesses were not available in the case of detention of J&K leaders. But however, the government has defended its actions by stating that established procedure has been followed and the signing of such bonds are a legal requirement in order to release the political prisoners. However, the legality of these actions and decisions of the government will be looked into by the Supreme Court, which has started taking up petitions related to Article 370 and Jammu and Kashmir. Next, we have 3 articles in today's newspaper related to the Islamic State and the threat it continues to pose to India. We have an article on page number 1 which reports that a woman from Kerala who had travelled to Afghanistan to fight on behalf of ISIS-K or ISIS Khorasan has surrendered in Afghanistan, and she has been identified by Indian security agencies. We have one more article on page number 4, which reports the arrest of 3 terror suspects by the Delhi police. And according to the Delhi police, these suspects belong to the Bangladesh module of Islamic State, and they were looking to carry out terror attacks in New Delhi and in Assam. We also have one more article on page number 6, which reports that a special court of the NIA has found 6 individuals to be guilty for being a part of a ISIS terror module which was looking to carry out terror strikes in India. So in this context, we need to understand whether the ISIS continues to pose a threat to India and the rest of the world. Because over the last few months, we have studied that the ISIS has been more or less defeated and it has lost all territorial control in Iraq and Syria. See, the Battle of Baghouz, which was fought in early 2019, marked the final territorial defeat of ISIS. This was made possible thanks to the efforts of the United States, the Kurds who were fighting on behalf of the United States, Russia, and various other allies who were fighting against the Islamic State in and around Iraq and Syria. This loss of territorial control, in a way, marked the defeat of ISIS, which had earlier declared the establishment of an Islamic caliphate in Iraq and Syria. We have also recently studied that its leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, was eliminated by US Special Forces. So the question is, does the terror outfit still pose a threat to countries such as India and the rest of the world, even after its leader has been eliminated and even after the outfit has lost territorial control? The answer to this question is yes, because even though ISIS has been defeated territorially and even though its top leadership has been eliminated, the ideology of ISIS continues to remain alive and it continues to inspire individual acts of terrorism such as lone wolf attacks, and it continues to inspire small groups of people around the world to become self-radicalized and subscribe to the ideology because of the reach and the spread of the ideology by exploiting the power of the internet and social media. So even though the epicenter of ISIS activities in Iraq and Syria has been destroyed, its regional affiliates and regional modules continues to pose a threat. For example, the ISIS has a branch in Afghanistan known as ISIS-K or ISIS-Khorasan. Similarly, the Bangladesh module of ISIS, it continues to pose a threat. ISIS also has branches across the Middle East North Africa region. It has also established a presence in Sri Lanka and in Maldives. It also has a presence across Southeast Asia in countries such as Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, etc. And within India, there are 2 pockets in particular which are highly vulnerable to the ideology of ISIS and to the threat of self-radicalization. These pockets include the coastal districts of Kerala and few pockets in Tamil Nadu, especially around the Coimbatore-Madurai belt. In the case of Kerala, coastal districts such as Kasaragod and Kannur are highly vulnerable because a number of self-radicalized youth from this region have traveled to Iraq, Syria and Afghanistan to fight on behalf of the Islamic State. Then in the case of Tamil Nadu, self-radicalization has been noted amongst few youths in the Coimbatore-Madurai belt. Apart from this, there are few pockets across India which are still vulnerable to the ideology of Islamic State. This includes few pockets of Andhra Pradesh, particularly Hyderabad, few parts of Maharashtra and coastal Karnataka, few parts of West Bengal, especially around the India-Bangladesh border. So even though the Islamic State has suffered a severe blow in the last few months, its ideology continues to remain alive and it continues to pose a threat to India, especially in the form of lone wolf attacks and in the form of small self-radicalized groups. Next, we have a small update on the topic of air pollution in Delhi and stubble burning. The Supreme Court, which was looking into these cases, it has criticized the state government of Haryana and Punjab for failing to prevent stubble burning within their jurisdiction, which is one of the primary factors which is adding to the deteriorating air quality in the Delhi NCR region. The Supreme Court has equated the situation to an internal war, wherein the failure of the state governments of Haryana and Punjab has literally turned Delhi into a gas chamber. The Supreme Court has taken note of the significant impact that air pollution and water pollution in the Delhi NCR region is having on the citizens, and hence it has issued a set of directions for the authorities. The Supreme Court has directed the Central Pollution Control Board to submit a status report on the industries which are operating in the Delhi NCR region and the extent of pollution that they are causing. It has also directed the Delhi government and the centre to come up with a plan within 10 days to install air purifiers across Delhi NCR. Next, the Supreme Court has also shown its interest to apply the law of torts to deal with pollution and fix liability on the polluters and authorities. See, in legal terminology, a tort refers to a civil offense which is carried out by one party, and this civil offense will cause some suffering or loss or damage to another party. So when such a civil offense or tort is committed, and if the law of torts is applied, then the party who is suffering loss and damage, he is liable to be paid compensation from the party who is causing the civil offense. See, over here, party A might have caused the offense intentionally or unintentionally, but either ways, he will be liable to pay compensation to the one who is suffering damage and losses. So if the law of torts is applied to pollution, then the Supreme Court can fix liability on the polluters who are causing pollution and on the authorities who are failing to prevent pollution. And this compensation amount can be paid to the citizens who are suffering because of poor quality of air and water. Now let's take up an article from page number 1, which refers to a unique conservation initiative in Assam. Under this conservation initiative, the Assamese Gamosa is being used to spread awareness about the conservation of freshwater turtles in the Brahmaputra river. See, the Assamese Gamosa refers to the traditional white cotton towel which is hand woven. This towel is usually rectangular in shape and it has a white center, and it is surrounded by red borders on the 4 sides. So this traditional hand woven cotton towel of Assam is referred to as Gamosa, and it is of great cultural significance in Assam because this towel is used in various rituals, festivals, weddings, etc. It is also used by farmers in Assam. It is used by Bihu dancers, and as a result, this traditional cotton towel known as Gamosa has a lot of cultural significance. In fact, efforts are being made to even procure a GI tag for the Assamese Gamosa. This cultural symbol is being used to promote awareness about turtle conservation by weaving the images of endangered turtles into the towel. This initiative has been taken up as a community-driven initiative in the Biswanath district of Assam. See, the Biswanath district is located on the northern banks of the Brahmaputra river, which flows through the Kaziranga National Park. See, the wildlife division of the Biswanath district is very rich in biodiversity, and hence the Biswanath Wildlife Division has already been included as a part of the Kaziranga National Park. So the Brahmaputra river flowing through the Biswanath district is very rich in a number of endangered turtles. This includes the Assam Roofed Turtle, which has been listed as endangered by the IUCN. This community-driven awareness initiative has been taken up because the fishing community in the Biswanath district had lost interest in the conservation of the endangered turtles in the Brahmaputra river. Because after the Biswanath Wildlife Division was included in the Kaziranga National Park, there were restrictions which were placed on the fishing activities in the region. So, because of the expansion of the Kaziranga National Park into the Biswanath Wildlife Division, the restrictions which were placed, they started to have an impact on the fishing community, and this started to reduce their income. So, as a result, the fishing community started to lose interest in conserving the endangered turtles. So, in order to revive the interest of the local fishing community in the conservation of the freshwater turtles, a self-help group known as Kaso Saki has been set up. This self-help group is funded by a number of environmental conservation NGOs. It is this self-help group which has come up with the idea of making use of Assam's cultural symbol, that is the Assamese Gamosa, and weave the images of endangered turtles into the cotton towel so that awareness could be spread about turtle conservation amongst the local community. This unique initiative will not only promote awareness and it will not only promote community participation in conservation efforts, but it will also generate additional income for the local communities. Now let's take up an article from page number 9. The Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, which is responsible for regulating food safety and food standards in the country, has come out with its report on the enforcement of its norms. According to this report, around 3.7% of the food samples in the country have been found to be unsafe. Around 15.8% of the food samples have been found to be substandard. And around 9% of the food samples have been found to have labeling defects. See, the statistics and the state-wise rankings that has been brought out by the report is not really relevant for our exams. But what is important to us is the fact that this is the first time that the FSSAI has come up with a report that has separately compiled data for unsafe foods, for substandard food items, and for labeling defects. The question is, how does this help the government, or how does this improve food safety in the country? See, the separate classification of data on unsafe and substandard food and labeling defects and the state-wise ranking will provide precise information to the authorities at the state level, and it will help them to identify the sources of unsafe and substandard food. It will also help the authorities to standardize the labeling requirements, especially the labeling of processed food items. So such data will help the state level food inspectors and the authorities to take precise and corrective action, which will prevent the entry of such unsafe and substandard food into the market. Now let's take up a column from page number 10 written by N.L. Raja, which evaluates the long endurance of the Indian Constitution. See, today, that is the 26th of November, is celebrated as the Constitution Day or National Law Day, or also known as the Samvidhan Divas. On this day in 1949, the Constitution of India was adopted by the Constituent Assembly. On this occasion, the writer says that as the Indian Constitution steps into its 70th year, the Indian Constitution has become one of the world's oldest and most enduring constitutions. This is quite significant and remarkable because when the Indian Constitution was adopted in 1949, a number of constitutional experts around the world, they had criticized the Indian Constitution and they had said that the Indian Constitution would not last very long. One such critic was Sir Ivor Jennings, who was one of the leading constitutional experts at that point of time. Sir Ivor Jennings felt that the Indian Constitution was too long, too rigid, and too prolix. According to his opinion, the Indian Constitution was very lengthy and it was not flexible. So according to him, the Indian Constitution could not adapt according to the changing needs of the people, and as a result, he expected that the Indian Constitution will not endure for a very long time. Sir Ivor Jennings made these observations when he was delivering a lecture at the University of Madras in 1951. And these lectures of Sir Ivor Jennings was attended by Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, who was one of the chief architects of the Indian Constitution. So when Mr. Iyer heard these assumptions and observations of Sir Ivor Jennings, he was extremely concerned and he started countering his arguments by writing a series of articles. Being one of the chief architects of the Indian Constitution, Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer believed that the Indian Constitution would be an enduring document. In retrospect, he has been proven right. The irony is that Sir Ivor Jennings was later invited by Sri Lanka to help draft its constitution. Sir Ivor Jennings played a key role in drafting Sri Lanka's first constitution. Again, the irony is that this constitution lasted only 6 years, whereas the Indian constitution is successfully stepping in to its 70th year. So in retrospect, we can say that constitutional experts such as Sir Ivor Jennings have been proven wrong and India's founding fathers have been proven right. So in this context, we need to understand why has the Indian Constitution endured for 70 years. But before that, we need to understand how long does a constitution last on an average and what factors contribute to the collapse of a constitution. See, in order to understand the average lifespan of a constitution, we need to look at a study that was conducted by the University of Chicago. This study had evaluated around 792 constitutions of every independent state during the period 1789 to 2006. According to this study, a majority of the constitutions do not last. Around 518 constitutions have been replaced during this period. The study has shown that the average lifespan of a constitution during this period has been around 17 years. And the lifespan varies from region to region because every region has a different set of regional factors. In regions such as Latin America and Africa, which have seen more conflicts and revolutions, constitutions do not last more than 12.4 years or 10.2 years respectively. Whereas in Western Europe, where there is more stability, constitutions tend to last around 32 years on average. And in Asia, constitutions have lasted for around 19 years on an average. In comparison to this, the Indian Constitution is successfully entering into its 70th year. This in itself is a remarkable achievement, and the entire credit should go to our founding fathers for drafting a constitution which has not only endured but has also taken care of the complexity and diversity of India. Now let us understand as to what does a constitution provide for. See, a constitution provides for a set of rights that we call as fundamental rights. It might place a set of duties on the citizens. It might impose certain set of duties on the government as well, which we refer to as directive principles of state policy. It will also outline a set of ideals, principles, and national goals that the country should aspire for. And it will also provide for the establishment of authorities and institutions in order to protect these rights and uphold these ideals and achieve these national goals. But more importantly, a constitution will try to restrict the power of these authorities and institutions in order to ensure that the fundamental rights of the citizens is not violated. According to the writer, a constitution with these features can last and endure if it is inclusive, flexible, and detailed. A constitution has to be inclusive if it has to last and endure, because it has to take into account the aspirations of the people. It has to meet the needs and the demands of various communities, various religions, castes, regions, etc. If the aspirations of certain sections of the society are not met, and if the constitution is not inclusive, then it will easily give rise to a rebellion or a civil war. Along with this, if a constitution has to last and endure, it has to be flexible, because the aspirations of the people will not remain constant. It will change with time. And as the aspiration changes, these aspirations and these new demands have to be met by the Constitution. And this can be done only by amending the Constitution. And if you have to amend the Constitution has to be flexible. It cannot be rigid. Then finally, if a constitution has to last and endure, it has to be detailed. The study conducted by University of Chicago has shown that lengthier constitutions have lasted longer. Because such a detailed constitution will contain specific provisions and there will be no scope for any ambiguity. So a detailed constitution will clearly define the rights and the duties of the citizens and as well as the powers of the authorities. It will clearly define the restriction on the powers of the authorities. So when a constitution is inclusive, flexible and detailed, it can prevent rebellion, civil war and war, which are the primary conditions behind the overthrow and replacement of constitutions around the world. So if the Indian constitution has lasted for 70 years, then we need to thank the far-sightedness of our founding fathers, which provided for an inclusive, flexible and detailed constitution. We need to thank the drafting committee and as well as the members of the Constituent Assembly and the subsequent amendments for clearly defining the rights and the duties of the citizens. We need to thank our founding fathers for providing us a set of ideals, principles and goals in the preamble which we as a nation can aspire towards. We need to thank our founding fathers for clearly defining the roles and the powers of various authorities and institutions. We need to thank them for restricting the powers of authorities and institutions. We have to thank the drafting committee and the Constituent Assembly for establishing India as a democratic, secular, sovereign republic. It is only justified to treat the Constitution of India as the only holy book of the country, which has provided us principles such as federalism, judicial review, independent judiciary, a flexible amendment procedure, separation of powers, etc. It is because of this constitution that India as a country has endured despite its complexity and diversity. And for this, we need to thank and remember our founding fathers for striking the right balance between the conflicting needs of various sections of the society. Next, we have a column on page number 10 written by David Malpass, who is the president of the World Bank Group. The writer appreciates India for increasing access to school and for increasing school coverage through its Right to Education Act. He credits India for declaring right to education as a fundamental right, and he says that this legislation, along with various other government schemes, have successfully increased access to school and coverage of school. But now, the challenge for India is to focus on the quality of education. The writer says that India has successfully managed to bring more children into classrooms. But the problem is that they are not really learning. If learning has to be improved, then the government needs to focus on the quality of education. So the writer reminds the Indian government of the Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which is to ensure quality education for all. The writer says that if India has to achieve these goals, it needs to look for examples from other countries and it should also create the right classroom environment. To substantiate this argument, the writer draws a few examples from Kenya and Vietnam, and he highlights how technology and a well-designed syllabus has been used to improve the quality of education. He says that these are some lessons that India can learn from. India has definitely increased the reach and access of schools, but right now it needs to inculcate the right technology, the right teachers, the right training programs, the right curriculum, and it needs to create the right classroom so that the quality of education can improve. In fact, the World Bank is working with governments around the world in order to create the right classroom. It is trying to help governments to inculcate the right technology and teaching methods. It is trying to help governments to hire the right teachers and provide them high quality training. It is also working with governments to design the right curriculum which can be inclusive and effective. So the writer says that there is a direct connection between improving education and reducing poverty. He says that it is high time for India to start focusing on improving the quality of education. So, according to the writer, if India strives towards ensuring quality education for all, as mandated by the Sustainable Development Goal number 4, India can also come closer to achieving Sustainable Development Goal number 1, which is to have no poverty. Now, let us take up the practice questions. Which of the following statements are correct? NAFED, or the National Agricultural Cooperative and Marketing Federation of India, acts as an apex organization of marketing cooperatives for agricultural produce in India. This is a correct statement about NAFED. It is under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution. This statement is incorrect because NAFED is under the Ministry of Agriculture. It promotes the trade of agricultural produce and forest resources across the nation. This is again a correct statement because NAFED is a marketing cooperative. It tries to market or promote the trade of agricultural produce and forest resources. It also acts as a procurement agency as well. This statement is again correct. NAFED is involved in both procurement and marketing of agricultural products. Fifth statement says NAFED is the nodal agency to implement price stabilization measures under Operation Greens, which aims to double the farmers' income by 2020. This is again a correct statement. See, Operations Green was recently announced in the finance budget. It was announced in the finance budget of 2018. Under Operation Greens, the government is looking to stabilize the prices of the top crops. Top stands for tomato, onion, and potato. The main objective under Operation Greens is to ensure that the demand and supply are matched. Through such price stabilization mechanisms, the government is looking to double the farmers' income by 2020. And the nodal agency for implementing these price stabilization measures for the top crops is NAFED. So apart from the second statement, every other statement is correct. So option D is the right answer. This question has been asked because we have a related article on page number 9. According to this article, the central government has imported onions from Egypt in order to stabilize the prices in the domestic market and ensure that the demand and supply of onions are matched. Because see, recently the production and supply of onions was severely affected due to excessive rainfall and heavy flooding in major onion producing states such as Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, etc. So as a result, onion prices had started to shoot up. In order to regulate the prices, the government had implemented a number of emergency measures. It had imposed a temporary ban on the export of onions. It had even allowed the import of onions into the domestic market. And it had even placed limits on the stock holding of onions in order to prevent hoarding. So as a part of these emergency measures, the central government has imported the first batch of onions from Egypt, and NAFED, being the nodal agency for Operation Greens, it will be distributing and marketing the onions in the domestic market. And the center also expects the states to pitch in by providing an additional subsidy. Now let us take up the second practice question. Which of the following statements are correct? The Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology is focused on expanding research in the tropical Indian Ocean with special reference to monsoon meteorology and air-sea interaction of the Indian monsoon. It is under the control of the Ministry of Earth Sciences. It has developed a supercomputer known as Pratyush, which is considered as one of the fastest supercomputers in India and in the world. All the three statements are correct. Option C is the right answer. See, IITM has developed a supercomputer known as Pratyush, and it is considered to be one of the fastest supercomputers in India and as well as in the world. This question has been asked because we have a related article on page number 7. According to this article, the Secretary of the Ministry of Earth Sciences and experts from the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology have said that India needs to develop and improve its weather forecasting models so that we will be able to provide not just the forecast of the weather but as well as the impact of the weather. See, with regard to cyclones, the Indian Meteorological Department has already developed an advanced forecasting system. The IMD not only forecasts the exact date, time, and path of arrival of the cyclones, but it can even predict the possible impact of the cyclones on the coastal population. But such a prediction system is missing with regard to excessive rainfall. Over the last couple of years, we have seen that even though excessive rainfall has been predicted, the impact of such excessive rainfall has not been predicted. And this has resulted in the death of a number of people. So that's the reason why Indian forecasting agencies are trying to develop and improve their forecasting models to not just forecast extreme weather conditions, but also to tell the people about the impact of such extreme weather conditions. Now let us take up the third practice question. Benegal Narsingh Rao is known for being the first Indian judge in the International Court of Justice, for being the president of the UN Security Council, for being the constitutional advisor to the Constituent Assembly of India, for assisting in the drafting of the early constitution of Myanmar. All the four options are correct. Option D is the right answer. Benegal Narsingh Rao was the first Indian judge to be elected to the International Court of Justice. He served the ICJ in the early 1950s. He also served as the president of the UN Security Council when India had taken up the non-permanent membership of the UNSC in the early 1950s. And in 1946, he was invited by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar to be a part of the constitution drafting process. He was appointed as the constitutional advisor to the Constituent Assembly, and his main responsibility was to create the general framework of the Indian Constitution. He was basically responsible for working out the overall draft of the Indian Constitution. And he also assisted Myanmar in the drafting of its early constitution. So option D is the right answer. Now let us take up a map-based question. Which of the following ethnic group can you find in the Dibang Valley? To answer this question, you need to know where the Dibang Valley is located. Please look at this map. This map shows the northeast of India and specifically Arunachal Pradesh. This is where the Dibang Valley is located. It is located along the India-China border, and the Dibang River, which originates in Tibet, flows through this region. That's the reason why the district has been named as Dibang. And the people or the ethnic group that you can find in the Dibang Valley are the Mishmis. Option A is the correct answer. Now let us take up a practice question from the 2016 prelims paper. Consider the following pairs. Basically, they have given a list of ethnic groups and the country that they are found in. You need to check whether they are correctly matched. By looking at this, we can say that Kurds are not found in Bangladesh. Kurds are found in Turkey, Iran, Iraq and Syria, but not in Bangladesh. Madhesis are found in Nepal. This is correct. Madhesis are found in the Terai belt of Nepal. Rohingyas are found in the Rakhine state of Myanmar. So both 2 and 3 are correctly matched. Option C is the right answer. Finally, let's take up a couple of mains practice questions. The first question, the ISIS has lost its territorial control in Iraq and Syria and its leader has been eliminated. In your opinion, does the terror outfit still pose a threat to India? The second question, according to you, what features of the Constitution makes it an enduring document even in today's world? Of course, the question is talking about the Indian Constitution. So kindly write an answer to these questions and post them in the comment section below. This concludes our discussion for the day. Thanks for watching.